While he was visiting an internet startup office this morning, I caught up with the Prime Minister and I started by asking him if he was now raising security levels for the Jewish community in Britain and for the police.
Yes, and that's what we discussed with the intelligence and security and policing services in the meeting I held earlier this week. Obviously, it's very important to learn the lessons from anything that happens elsewhere in Europe, to ask questions about could that happen here, what steps should be taken. And so the police have announced today, the Metropolitan Police, that they'll be stepping up patrols, particularly to protect the Jewish community. But we have to be incredibly vigilant and look at all of these particular risks, including the risks to police officers themselves, and to take every action that we can.
Is it because you've got specific threats that you're aware of, or is it more about giving reassurance?
Well, we don't give a running commentary on specific threats, but these steps were taken because of what happened in Paris and because of the situation that we face generally.
What does it mean if you've got a threat level raised for the police? They're obviously, some of them are feeling quite unnerved by a sense that they're under surveillance.
But all these threat levels, whether the general threat level, which is the one that we refer to most frequently, which is now at severe, or individual threat levels to individual sectors or organisations, these are set by reference to the threats that we believe we face. They're set by the Joint Terrorism Assessment Centre, not by politicians. But obviously when you're at the level of severe, as we are at the moment, generally that means we think, according to the evidence, an attack is highly likely.
You went to Paris on Sunday. You were part of the demonstration after the killings there, proclaiming Je suis Charlie like others. The Pope has chipped in on this argument, and he's saying that actually ordinary, moderate Muslims, the mass of Muslims, can easily be offended by drawings of the Prophet. You cannot insult the faith of others, he says. You know what he's saying there? He's riding to their defence and saying, actually, we shouldn't have these images. Do you agree with him?
No, I think it's a very important distinction we need to make here. Of course, Muslims can be offended by a particular cartoon, just as a Christian I might be offended if someone said something dreadful about Jesus. So of course we should have an open debate about what's appropriate and how we should treat each other. But in the end of the day, we live in a free country where if a newspaper or magazine wants to publish something within the law, they should be free to make that judgment. Really? And I back them in making that judgment, even if I don't like the particular product they might produce.
And in this case, you don't?
Well, I'm not making a comment about that.
You're here at an internet startup company. You're at the home of the big tech companies of the world. And you've come over here as a Brit, a limey, saying, give me your keys to your computer systems.
That's not what I'm saying.
That's not going to go down well. That's not going to really get anywhere, is it?
That is not what I'm saying at all. What I'm saying is very similar to what the US government has said for decades and what we've said in Britain for decades, which is that in a free society, we all believe in civil liberties, in privacy. This is vitally important, but in extremis, given that we face a terrorist threat, the state should be able, on the production in Britain of a signed warrant by the Home Secretary, to listen into a phone call between terrorists to try and stop them from doing what they're doing. And that needs to apply in the online world as it does in the telephone world. That's the simple principle that I bring. And the conversations we're having with these companies they're run by good and sensible people. We're having good and productive conversations with them.
They have enormous commercial interests. In the end, we're not China. You're not going to put a wall up. You're not going to be able to stop them.
No, you're absolutely right, we're not China. The point is, in Britain, we have a very clear set of legal procedures. I'm not trying to go through a back door here. The legal procedures we have are about going through the front door in a legal and proper way. But it is important we have these conversations, and of course the companies themselves, they have all sorts of interests, but one of their interests, I would argue, is that they don't want to be the platform that becomes safe for terrorists to talk to each other and plan appalling outrages.
I know you think the media are obsessed by debates, but we're in the land that gave birth to them. One of the fundamental problems with politics in Britain is trust, a lack of trust in politicians. Why don't you just be honest? You think debates help your rivals. They bring up, they equalise the Ed Miliband's, the Nigel Farage's. That's why you don't want it.
No, I don't accept that. I mean, before the last election, I was the front runner, as it were, and it's always been the case in Britain. Debates haven't happened because the front runner wouldn't accept them. Well, I was the first front runner. Tony Blair didn't do this. Margaret Thatcher didn't do this. I was the first front runner to say, let's have these debates, and I'm glad we did.
We're talking about this election.
No, I'm just making the point that I'm not anti-debates, I'm pro-debates. But I think that I'm making a very simple point, which is you can't have two of the minor parties without having the third one. And I think the public, actually, from what I've seen, back me in that very clear view.
You've made a calculation of risk that you might just get away with this and it'll be better than the price you pay with the voters because it won't actually switch any votes.
Well, I'm not trying to get away with anything.
This is
I think the debates,
land of the polygraph.
No, I think the debates would be good if they took place. But what you can't have, given that the Greens and UKIP both beat the Liberal Democrats at the European elections, you can't have one but not the other. It's not a complicated point. But I must say I'm glad we're having this argument now because, as I said, the other point I made is let's get the debates outside the election campaign itself, because otherwise they take over the entire campaign. And I think from all the questions I've been asked, I think that's quite a good judgment.
So before the manifestos are published?
Well, everyone knows what our plans are. I can run through our manifesto in quite a lot of detail if you want me to right now.
No, you wouldn't. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.